Hi, welcome Brightlights to Healers with Humor, a podcast brought to you by Candice, the visionary behind Indiglow Soul, and Shelly, the owner of Finding Your Light. Join us as we explore the intricacies of our healing experiences and share the wisdom we've accumulated along the way. In each episode, we're going to invite you into our intimate conversations where we candidly explore the highs and the lows of our healing experiences. Through our podcast, we want to extend our hands to those navigating their own path of healing, offering a sanctuary of understanding and companionship. Whether you're navigating through the shadows of self-doubt or reveling in the glow of self-discovery, Healers with Humor is there to honor the strength that it takes to heal and celebrate the joys of self-love and growth. Join us on this journey, embracing the beauty of healing and the power of community.
Welcome to today's episode of Healers with Humor, Season 1, Episode 4, Spiritual Awakening.
All right. Hi, Candice.
Hey.
Hey, so for everyone, we've been chit-chatting and realized that I really should make a first correction on the title right in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that we should really be talking about spiritual awakenings and healing journeys and not necessarily using those terms interchangeably. So let's just make sure that we remember that so we don't confuse anyone else.
Yes, agree.
What I love about each time that we do this is that you and I learn so much, either about ourselves or just in general on the topic.
Yes, agree.
So,
yep, always so much learning to happen. And this is in a fun way, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about a spiritual awakening. What were signs of your spiritual awakening? And we'll save the questions about healing journey until later.
Yes. So I had to really think about this because I don't know that I had reflected back on my spiritual awakening. So thinking about some of the things or signs that I was ready for one or that it was happening. One of the big ones was seeking information. So I didn't, once I graduated from college a number of years ago and I started my corporate job, I didn't do, it's gonna sound bad, but I didn't do a lot of learning, right? I had spent so much time in school that I was like, I just need a break. And I was starting my corporate job and career. And so I was learning more about that, those industries. And I just kind of stopped seeking information. And so when I started seeking information again and just not being content with my everyday life as it had always been, that's one of the big signs of a spiritual awakening for me anyway. And that goes along with the sense that there was just more out there to be explored that I hadn't spent any time on because I'd been so consumed with living in the matrix, right? Or living this life I was supposed to be living. And then it's kind of all intertwined, but wanting to learn new things. So then I wanted to know more about, crystals and oils and, all kinds of different things. So those were my signs. How about you? What were you thinking when some of your signs?
So I definitely can relate to the not feeling content because I think the word that I would use for it is feeling unsettled. Like this isn't working any longer. I've really started questioning things. I think most of my life I accepted what people told me, parents, teachers, pastors who, whatever I was taught was, okay, I'll accept that. But I really started questioning things, mostly because I think that I had done, like you said, right, everything that you believe the Matrix has taught you to want or to do. And frankly, some of those things weren't working well for me. A lot of reevaluating life in general. Is this what life is supposed to be? Is this what makes me happy? But I think where I can really identify with what you said is I was really searching for something. What's it supposed to be? What do I want? Is this what it's supposed to be? Is this life, right? And sometimes I've actually used the word, you'd seen people have a midlife crisis. I like the term unraveling better.
Mhm.
But I think as you start to tease apart those things, right, whether it's questions, searching, reading, wanting to learn, it's all, like you said, right, a hunger for either information or curiosity outside of yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. That you didn't have before.
Right.
Yeah. For me, that was the biggest piece. So you alluded to the fact that we will use the words spiritual awakening and healing journey synonymously. Tell me a little bit about, those other terms, breakdown, unraveling, midlife crisis. Where did those intersect for you? Did they not? How are they different?
So I think the reason why I've used them interchangeably is because for me, a lot of times they were happening at the same time.
Mhm.
If I think about how if you think about two strings, right, they were really running along each other. But when we talked about this topic and I think about spiritual awakening, right, I think of that's the questions, the reevaluating. And I really put that as an awakening of my soul and finding its purpose.
Mhm.
That's what I view has been the spiritual awakening part. And certainly I think there's a piece of right being open to the magic that's all around you. But the healing journey for me was so much more about the inner child work,
Mm.
the shadow work, and really getting to know myself, digging into, past trauma and
Mhm.
things that I had sort of either nicely tucked away that were all now brimming over the surface.
Mhm.
Those things that, I did more with a evaluation of myself and maybe a therapist were more of what I would put in the basket as my healing journey. For me, they
Mhm.
were just so intertwined and happening at the same time.
Yep.
How do you
Same.
view it?
Exactly the same. So when I really sat down to think about, were these two journeys the same? They were not. They were not separate or the same, but to your point, they were intertwined. And they did have, for me, they had the same starting point, which was pain. So pain, that physical pain in my body were at the forefront for both of those journeys. But to your point, I had the healing journey of the pain, which brought me to energy work, which then brought me to more of that soul awakening and doing that. The other difference for me is, you mentioned the word breakdown or midlife crisis. I unfortunately had definitely had one of those. And, in the quest to, I'm not going to say be perfect because I don't ever think I thought I was perfect, but I'm definitely an overachiever and always want to do things the right way and quickly and efficiently and all those things. And so in my overachiever mode of trying to understand, to your point, the trauma that I had tucked away, the spiritual journey that I was on, I probably pushed things a little bit harder than they needed to be pushed because I wanted answers. And so when things started to come in, they came in a little bit too quickly and literally turned me upside down and just kind of rocked my world, right? So I ended up with vertigo and what I'll call a nervous breakdown. I cognitively did not function the same. So I thought, at the beginning, when I got my information about what I needed to heal from a trauma perspective, that I was dealing with it okay. I had done enough work spiritually that my spirit team was like, no, ma'am, you are not doing this. You are not doing this in the right way. And so they literally had to turn me on my head so that I would slow down and figure the whole thing out. So they are intertwined. They're the same and different all at the same time.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So you were juggling a corporate job,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in a relationship. How in the world do you navigate a healing journey, a spiritual awakening, you know,
Yeah,
all the physical pain?
it was a lot. It was a lot. And I'm going to say it was not pretty. It was very, very messy. To your point, I have been in a relationship for a very long time. My husband and I have been married for 24 years and together for 29. So we've literally grown up together. I was working, 80 hours a week, climbing that corporate ladder, doing all the good, the things that I was supposed to. And at the same time, dealing with just so much pain in my body. And so I think I was the queen of compartmentalizing.
Mm.
So I focused on what I needed to focus on at that time, and I just didn't really deal with anything else. But that, again, all came tumbling down in 2021, early 2021. And that's when I really took a step back because my body made me. And I think the hardest part for my marriage in that aspect was sound silly, but I, again, was highly functioning, right? So I may have had all these other things going on, but I was always 3 steps ahead, right? I always, knew what needed to happen next or 3 steps from now. I always had the vacations planned. I always had the food, grocery list done. I already had the meals cooked. When I had my nervous breakdown, I couldn't do any of that. I could barely make a grocery list. Never mind actually go do the shopping. And so I think that was probably the hardest part. So he obviously didn't want to see me struggling and hadn't experienced that before, right? In our marriage. But he was there for it. The good, bad, and the ugly. God
That's a
bless.
lot.
Yeah, it certainly does. And he was patient. And it makes me emotional just thinking about it. But he was very patient. He stepped up when I couldn't. Um, and we just got through it. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we had a solid foundation, right?
Mm.
We'd been together for so long. And quite honestly, we had already had some struggles. So probably 10 years before that, we had some infertility issues.
Mm.
And so we were not able to have children. And so a lot of times that will really impact a marriage, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And we obviously went to some therapy and, did what we needed to do to make sure that we were supporting each other in that. So we already had a really solid foundation. Communication was absolutely at the forefront of everything. And I had to learn how to ask for help.
Mm.
Da-da-da.
That's one we both tackled.
Man, why is that so hard?
I would like to make a little side note that both of us have really done a lot of work on that and actually learned to ask each other for help.
That's
So,
right. Woo woo. Yes, absolutely. And, part of that is when you grow up and you don't get what you need,
Mm.
you learn how to do it yourself. And then it takes a lot of trust and, it takes a lot of trust to know that when you ask for something, even if the person can't give it to you at that moment, that it's okay to ask for help. So yeah, that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, but I think you hit on some key things though. Being in a relationship during a healing journey or a spiritual awakening, the working together,
Mhm.
communicating, trusting, asking for help, right? All of those things are really important in a normal part of your relationship. But in this
Yeah.
part, those are even so much more important to have those established.
Yeah. Agree. 100%. Yeah. Cause again, this journey only started for me in 2018. So it's only been,
Mhm.
right, 5, 6, 7 years. We've been together for a long time before that. It's not like we were just in a new relationship or we had only been married for 5 years or 10 years or
Mhm.
whatever. But, I'll turn that question back to you, right? Because you're in a corporate job, right? You also
Right.
had, your own things that you were working on and dealing with, healing journey, trauma, all of the things. How did that work in your relationship?
Yeah. So I'd say when I started my spiritual awakening, I was still married.
Mhm.
The marriage was not in a good place. I was actually trying to decide if I was going to stay or go and ended up staying an extra year.
Mm.
But that last 2 years, I spent a lot of time, I'll say, in my own mind, right?
Yeah.
If I look back, I can see how the books I read changed. They went from, you kind of alluded to this earlier, right? When it was, I don't want to learn anything else.
Yeah.
But even the books that I read really changed from like easy breezy, light romantic stories to more of a self-help understanding books, right?
Mhm.
So the books on my nightstand changed. The thoughts that I was having that were changing, I was just not communicating them with my spouse.
Mhm.
He had his own space that he was working in. The last year that I was married, he actually was a recovering alcoholic.
Mhm.
But during that time, one of the things that I didn't understand is that he got quieter and
Mm.
more distant. And then I was quiet because I was in my head and more distant. And the thoughts that were going through my mind were ones of, that questioning that we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
Is this what I want my life to be? Is this what I've been, shooting for the whole time?
Mhm.
And so frankly, life just kept getting harder and I was withdrawing. He was withdrawing.
Mhm.
So when everything really took off, I had decided to move out. So I got separated.
Mhm.
So now by myself in an apartment,
Mhm.
everything is changing
Mhm.
except my corporate job.
Yeah.
My mind's running 100 miles a minute, asking myself lots of questions.
Mhm.
Who am I? What do I want to be?
Mhm.
What does life look like? What kind of life am I trying to build?
Yeah.
And frankly, that's really when I'd say the healing journey kind of kicked in.
Mhm.
That's when I decided to start with a therapist and really start tackling some of the things that things I didn't even remember, but lots of things that I had, right? How I had grown up,
Mhm.
relationships, how I had gotten to this place in my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my family,
Mhm.
and certainly moving into the relationship with myself.
Yeah.
And I think the key piece that helped me kind of keep on that path was really surrendering, which that's not my favorite word, but I've grown to be warmer with it. It
Us control
is
freaks don't like surrender.
was not to distract myself. Like I really
Mhm.
had to sit with the pain and the loneliness and the loss and the confusion and and really sit and be with that
Mhm.
because I think I would not have gotten where I am today, right? Into the energy healing,
Mhm.
the healing journey part of it, where so much
Mhm.
has really changed there too for me. If I had not really just sat in it.
Yeah. Well, we're not taught to do that, right? We're taught to do the distractions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's the easy part. And when we change our behavior and we change being distracted,
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that and how that changes relationships or when we're not distracting ourselves or showing up in the same way as we have before. Those things that just kind of, become iffy during this time of, spiritual and he- healing.
Yeah, so certainly, as I mentioned, everything had changed.
Mhm.
Everything but my
The
day job.
landscape is different. Yes.
But the things that I was doing changed, right? So it started, I mentioned therapy. My friends changed, right? Because a lot of times when you get separated and divorced, friends pick
Mm.
one or the other, or he lived
Yes.
in the neighborhood, or he went to the church, or
Mhm.
whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
And so my friends were different. I was journaling, I was meditating, I was actually experiencing emotions for,
Mhm.
for the first time. And so the things that I think that became, I'll say iffy or more difficult is really, I've been so logical my whole life,
Mhm.
right? There's a checklist.
Mhm.
These are the things that you have to do to have a good marriage, to be a good person, to be a good employee. And I've really decided that there's very little I'm going to do that's logical.
Mhm.
I'm going to try it that way. One of the hardest parts of that's really trusting myself.
Mhm.
Man, I'm 5 or 6 years into the spiritual awakening and the healing journey.
Yep.
And my team really has to keep keep
Mhm.
circling that one, right? So it's clearly one of the harder lessons for me to learn.
Mhm.
But man, the piece about like how much more life is magical.
Mm.
what I believe in now, what is possible, and what we have to work with, and who's out there, and what a spiritual team looks like.
Yeah.
That part's amazing.
Yes.
What parts did you have to deal with? Or what made it, more challenging for you? Because you and I are so similar, right? We
We are
both had
very
corporate jobs. We're both very logical,
Yes, very analytical. I never met a spreadsheet I didn't like.
but both trying to be so,
Yeah.
optimistic
Mhm.
perfectionists.
Yes. Yeah,
Have this spiritual
perfectionism.
awakening and healing journey with an A plus.
That's right. That's exactly right. I would say things I think this would be like pre-breakdown, post-breakdown. Pre-breakdown, I just kept a lot to myself, right? I was really trying to figure out what a lot of these things meant. I did a lot of inside work, right? I to your point, spent a lot of time in my head. I didn't talk about it with too many people. I did start going to some classes, starting to, build a community a bit, and that definitely was beautiful. So meeting some more like-minded people, that type of thing. But after the breakdown, the mask dropped
Uh,
and I couldn't pick it back up. And that was interesting, and I don't know that if I hadn't had the breakdown, that the mask would have dropped or I would have stopped doing that. So what ended up happening is the people that I could be around changed.
uh.
So the I really had to set boundaries because I energetically, right, just didn't have the energy to be with a lot of people, right, during that time frame. I was literally dizzy for like 4 months. Right, off balance. I couldn't drive. There were all, cognitively, I couldn't even look up without getting dizzy. So there was a lot of things to just my landscape changed dramatically. And so the people in my life had to change dramatically.
Mm.
But I was very careful with who I shared things with. So I was still figuring things out. So to your point, I'm 5 or 6 years out from all of that. Things look much different now. The landscape, has changed even more since then. And I would say that, my life is more magical now. Leaving the corporate job, changing my friends, you know, y- I didn't I didn't use or abuse alcohol or substances before at all. I certainly don't now. But that was a big piece that changed for me. I could not be around people who all they wanted to do was be in a substance. And that was the main focus of our interactions. And so
Mhm.
that was really hard because that's what most of America wants to do. And so I really had to set boundaries around that. And I couldn't be really still don't want to be in those interactions for very long anyway.
So there's a couple things that you said that make me wonder if part of that is connected to, right, what most of society is doing,
Mhm.
right? a lot of a lot of what we do for entertainment is covering up coping mechanisms for trauma,
Mhm.
anxiety, and other things.
Mhm.
But when you mentioned, you had your breakdown and the mask drop because you didn't have a choice,
Mhm.
it really took me back to getting a divorce. Everything that I had always made look like it was working,
Mhm.
perfect little life on the outside of the house.
Yep.
I lost all pride, right? Pride was my mask. And it really losing that, right? And you can't hide. I moved. I don't have a husband anymore. I
Right.
don't live in the neighborhood, right? You can't hide any of that stuff. Really helped me to learn to be vulnerable,
Mhm.
right? Because I couldn't, you couldn't pretend anymore, right? Things don't look, but so many people would say, wow, you guys seem so happy. Everything seems so perfect, right? Which meant I was doing a great job at what I was trying
Yeah,
to do.
exactly.
But you weren't getting to know me, right, and what was
Right.
going on, and so that dropping of that mask, I think we really need to highlight as a big piece to both the spiritual awakening and the healing journey, right? Getting real, getting authentic. We've talked about,
Mhm.
authenticity.
Yep.
But the other piece that you mentioned was community, and I think
Mhm.
that we've touched on that before, but I do think that's so critical, right? The
Yes.
right people in community are so important during those things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a huge piece for me, being able to talk about the things that I wanted to talk about, right? Astrology was a big piece of my journey. I loved astrology when I was younger,
Mm.
and I'd kind of forgotten about that. And back in the day it was just your sun sign, right? But now it's so much more, and it's so much more mainstream, and you can learn so much about yourself. And not that it's the end all be all, because I don't think there's any modality or anything that is the end all be all. They're data points. And the community that I was able to build for myself has been beautiful, you included.
Mm.
And I don't know that I would be where I am now in my journey, both healing and spiritual, if I hadn't had the community that I did to be able to talk freely about, the things that we believe in now, right?
Mm.
We can see rainbows, right? We know those are real, but, I know that there's a unicorn out there too.
Mm.
And that there's leprechauns and there's, fairies and all the beautiful things. We don't get to talk about those things, right?
Yeah, I
Every
think
day.
a good tip that I want to make sure that we realize, because you said, you're always interested in astrology.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think it's important to pay attention to those things. As a kid, I used to always go by this palm reader's house. It had palm reading and tarot card reading. And I'd always wanted to go in. And if I look at periods of time in my life, I was drawn to that my entire life. Just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go in and see.
Me too.
And I think all of those things are little signs.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you feel that pull,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's to a crystal or to astrology or to a person,
Mm-hmm.
a modality, right? Those are little signs that they're like little breadcrumbs
Yep.
for you to follow or not.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I got to ask one more question just because I'm also a crystal lover and you mentioned crystals earlier.
Yes.
So obviously I am in a home by myself where I can buy as many crystals, but I want to know how your husband reacted to all the crystals.
So he has been more welcoming of the crystals than my oracle cards. When the oracle cards show up every quarter, he's like, "Really? With the oracle card? You don't have a whole thing of them. You need more." I was like, "Of course, I always need more." But yeah, he loves crystals too. And he'll, if he's not feeling good, he's like, "Which crystal do I need to hold to make me feel better?" So he's been a very willing participant in all of this, and I'm unbelievably grateful for that.
Yeah, I love that. It's always interesting to me what intrigues other people,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's cards or crystals or essential oils.
Yep.
It's awesome that he's into that.
Yes. Yeah, he's got a whole little pile on his nightstand to help him sleep.
I love that.
Yes. Always such a beautiful conversation. I love this.
Yeah, thank you for really exploring this. Well, we were exploring it together and with you all
Yeah.
on a spiritual awakening and healing journeys. And I think now we're both clear on which is which.
A+ for today.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shelly. Have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
As we conclude this episode of Healers with Humor, we want to express our deepest gratitude to you, fellow Brightlights. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt exploration. Our journey began with a chance encounter at an expo, two souls seeking healing and connection. Through shared experiences, laughter, and tears, we forged a bond rooted in trust, love, and the relentless pursuit of growth. We invite you to continue this journey with us by sharing your own healing stories and connecting with us. Your presence in our community enriches our collective healing experience, and we're honored to walk alongside you. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore topics that resonate with the soul, offering insights, guidance, and inspiration along the way. Until then, remember, you are not alone on your healing journey. Thank you for tuning in, and may your path be illuminated with love, courage, and endless possibilities.